Once upon a time, high up in the sky, there lived a small, fluffy cloud named Puffy. She was as white as fresh snow and as soft as cotton candy. Puffy loved to float. But unlike other clouds who gathered together in one place, Puffy couldn't stay still. The wind always carried her far and wide, and it made her feel lonely. One sunny day, Puffy watched as other clouds played hide-and-seek behind a mountain peak. She sighed and tried to join them, but before she could, a gust of wind whisked her away. "Wait for me," Puffy called out. But the other clouds were too far now, and their laughter faded. Drifting alone, Puffy passed over a golden wheat field. Down below, a farmer looked up and waved. Puffy was surprised. No one had ever waved at her before. "Hello there, little cloud," the farmer called. "It's so dry here. Can you send us some rain?" Puffy didn't know how to make rain. "I'm just a lonely cloud," she said softly, "but I'll try." She focused all her fluffy energy, and soon, soft droplets of rain began to fall. The wheat glistened, and the farmer danced with joy. "Thank you," the farmer shouted. Puffy felt a tiny spark of happiness in her misty heart. As the wind carried her away again, Puffy realized that maybe, just maybe, she had a purpose after all. After helping the farmer, Puffy floated away with a little more confidence. She still felt lonely, but her heart warmed at the thought of making someone happy. As the wind carried her further, Puffy noticed a dry, winding riverbed below. The sun beat down, and the fish flopped helplessly in the shallow puddles. "Oh no," Puffy gasped. "That river needs water." A heron perched on a rock in the middle of the river looked up at her. "Little cloud," the heron squawked. "We've been waiting for rain for so long. Can you help us?" "I'll try," Puffy said. She puffed up her fluffy edges, gathered all the moisture she could, and squeezed herself as hard as possible. Plop, plop. Soon, raindrops began to fall. The dry earth soaked up the water, and the riverbed started to glisten. The heron flapped its wings in delight, and the fish swam happily once again. "Thank you, kind cloud," the heron called, its voice echoing across the newly flowing river. Puffy watched as the river sparkled under the sunlight, feeling proud of herself. As the wind nudged her along, Puffy whispered, "Maybe being carried away isn't so bad if I can keep helping along the way." But deep inside, she still longed for a friend to share her journey. Wind carried Puffy further across the land, over hills and valleys. As she drifted, Puffy noticed something troubling ahead, a forest of tall trees, their leaves brown and drooping. The ground below was dry, and the animals huddled together in the shade, looking thirsty and tired. Puffy floated closer, and a curious squirrel scampered up a tree, chittering at her. "Little cloud, the trees are wilting, and we're so thirsty. Can you help?" "I'll do my best," Puffy said, determined to bring relief. She gathered every last bit of moisture inside her fluffy form. Closing her eyes, she focused as hard as she could. Suddenly, rain began to pour, gently at first, then heavier. The trees lifted their branches to soak up the water, their leaves turning greener with every drop. The animals came out of hiding, playing and dancing in the puddles. A wise old owl hooted from his perch. "Thank you, Puffy. You've saved our forest." Puffy felt a little less lonely, knowing she had made a difference again. But as the wind carried her away, she sighed. "I wish I could stay longer to see them happy." Little did Puffy know, her journey was far from over. The wind carried Puffy across a busy town. As she floated overhead, she noticed a small playground in the middle of the city. The swings creaked as children played, but the air was hot and sticky. The kids looked tired, their cheeks red from the heat. Puffy drifted lower, watching them. A little girl in a bright yellow dress looked up and waved. "Hello, Cloud. It's so hot today. Can you help us cool down?" Puffy felt a spark of excitement. "Of course, I'll try," she said. Gathering all the cool moisture she could find, Puffy let out a soft drizzle. Tiny raindrops fell, refreshing the children. They squealed with delight, running and spinning in the rain. The air cooled, and the children laughed as puddles formed on the ground. Then, as the rain stopped, Puffy felt her fluffy edges shimmer. A beautiful rainbow appeared, stretching across the sky. The children gasped and clapped, pointing at the colorful arc. "You're amazing, little cloud," they cheered. Puffy felt her heart swell. Even though she couldn't stay, she had brought them joy. As the wind carried her away, Puffy smiled. "Maybe I'm not so lonely after all." The wind carried Puffy far from the city, over rolling hills and dry plains, until she reached a vast desert. The sun blazed fiercely, and the sand shimmered with heat. Puffy noticed a group of travelers with camels trudging across the dunes. They looked tired and thirsty, their faces streaked with sweat. One of the travelers glanced up and spotted Puffy. "Look, a cloud," he exclaimed. "Oh, little cloud, could you bring us some rain? We haven't seen water in days." Puffy hesitated. The desert air was so dry, and she didn't have much moisture left. But she couldn't let them suffer. "I'll try my best," she said, her voice full of determination. Puffy squeezed and puffed herself as much as she could, gathering the tiniest droplets from the sky. Finally, soft rain began to fall, cool and refreshing. The travelers cheered and held out their hands to catch the droplets. As the rain soaked into the sand, a few desert flowers began to bloom, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the golden dunes. Puffy watched in awe as the barren land transformed, even if just a little. "Thank you, little cloud," the travelers said, their spirits lifted. Puffy felt proud once again, though the desert wind soon nudged her onward. As she drifted away, she thought, "Everywhere I go, I leave something good behind. Maybe that's my purpose." The wind swept Puffy far from the warm desert to a cold and towering mountain. Puffy shivered as she drifted closer. The mountain was covered in ice and snow, but its peaks were bare and jagged, glistening under the pale sunlight. Puffy noticed a family of mountain goats struggling to climb the slippery slopes. They looked hungry and weak. One of the baby goats bleated softly, "The grass is frozen, and we can't find food. Can you help us, little cloud?" Puffy felt nervous. She had brought rain to dry places, but what could she do for a frozen mountain? She thought for a moment and then had an idea. "I'll try," Puffy said. She floated higher, gathering the sun's warmth as best as she could. Soon, Puffy began to drip soft, warm rain onto the icy slopes. The rain melted some of the snow, revealing patches of green grass hidden beneath. The goats bleated happily, nibbling at the fresh blades. "Thank you, little cloud," said the baby goat, its voice full of gratitude. As Puffy drifted away, she left behind a rainbow that stretched over the icy peaks. It sparkled like a magical bridge between the clouds and the earth. Puffy felt her loneliness ease as she realized she had brought life to even the coldest places. "I can help, no matter where the wind takes me," Puffy whispered to herself. The wind carried Puffy over a vast ocean, where waves crashed against jagged cliffs. Puffy noticed something unusual, a tall, lonely lighthouse perched on the edge of a rocky shore. Its light spun slowly, cutting through the darkening sky. Puffy floated closer and saw an old keeper sitting on the steps of the lighthouse, looking out at the stormy sea. He sighed deeply. "Another storm is coming, and the sailors will need guidance. But the air is too heavy, and the light can barely shine through the thick clouds. Maybe I can help," Puffy said, her fluffy edges curling with determination. She moved closer to the lighthouse, parting the heavy clouds that gathered around it. Slowly, Puffy cleared a path for the light to shine brighter and farther. The beams reached the distant horizon, and soon, a ship appeared in the distance, its sails struggling against the wind. The sailors on the ship saw the light and steered toward safety. "Thank you," they shouted, their voices carrying across the waves. The lighthouse keeper smiled and waved at Puffy. "You've saved lives tonight, little cloud." Puffy glowed with happiness as the wind carried her onward. The lighthouse's light continued to shine brightly, and Puffy left behind a soft drizzle that calmed the stormy waves. As she drifted away, she thought, "Even in the darkest places, I can bring light." After her journey over the lighthouse, Puffy felt a sense of purpose she had never known before. The wind carried her to a quiet meadow, where she paused for the first time in a long while. Puffy reflected on all the places she had been: the farmer's field, the river, the forest, the desert, the mountain, the playground, and the lighthouse. She thought about the lives she had touched. Puffy had brought rain to parched lands, helped animals and plants thrive, cooled children in the heat, and even guided sailors to safety. But she still felt a tiny pang of loneliness. Why do I still feel this way? Puffy wondered aloud. Just then, the wind whispered softly around her. Puffy, look below. Puffy gazed down and saw something extraordinary. All the places she had visited were connected by a trail of color and life. The farmer's wheat field was golden and healthy, the river sparkled, the forest was lush, and even the desert bloomed with tiny flowers. The mountain was alive with greenery, the playground echoed with laughter, and the lighthouse stood tall and proud. Puffy had left a piece of herself in every place she had touched. You're never truly alone, Puffy, the wind said. Your journey has created connections everywhere. Wherever you go, you leave behind something beautiful. Puffy smiled, her fluffy edges glowing in the sunlight. She realized that her purpose was to keep moving, spreading joy, life, and hope wherever she went. I'm not lonely, Puffy whispered. I'm part of everything. With a joyful swirl, Puffy let the wind carry her once more, ready to help wherever she was needed.